Hello friends and welcome back to A Bridge by Alpal. Before I get started, I wanted to address the situation with all the fans. We are currently in the middle of an extreme heat warning and our AC decided to die. So I've got about 3 fans going on me right now, which means that there might be a little bit of background noise and my hair will be moving the entire video. I hope it's not too distracting, but I do really need to film today to have enough time to edit before this goes up. And so I just decided it is what it is. My face will be red the entire time. My bangs might go completely flat by the end, but that's just what we're working with today. In this video, I'm going to be talking about 3 different kinds of e-readers that I've had over the years. My experience with each of these is kind of different, so I'll start with the Kindles. My family got our first Kindle when I was younger. I would say like 10 to 12 years old, but that was a shared one for the whole family. I got my first solo Kindle in about 2019 or 2020, and since then I've probably had 3 or 4 of them because I just loved them so much that like I would buy one and then I'd be like, oh, I want like an upgraded version of this, and so I'd pass it on to someone in my family and then I would buy a newer, nicer one. The Kobo, I got a Kobo Libra Color last year in April, so I've had it a little bit over a year now, and I pretty much cut over to that one cold turkey from the Kindle as soon as I got it. And lastly, I have an XTEInk X3, which I got in April of this year. So I haven't had it for very long, but I definitely have used it the most since getting it. A big question that people always ask me is, why do I need an e-reader and why not just read on my phone or my iPad? My main reason for this is that a screen of an e-reader is a lot better for your eyes than something that emits light. The e-ink does not emit light itself. You can get a backlight, which basically just shines light across the screen so that you can read it without a light on. The other big reason why get an e-reader is because it is so much more portable and so much lighter than carrying around even a single paperback book. And lastly, I feel like it makes discovering new books really easy, especially if you're on something like the Amazon ecosystem or the Kobo ecosystem. You know, they're trying to make money, and so they'll definitely promote books to you. Before I get into the rest of this, there are 2 things that I wanted to bring up that apply to kind of all of my e-readers. First of all, the UIs are never very super great on this. You're not getting a seamless experience like you are with an iPhone, but once you're actually in the books themselves, that definitely matters less because all you really need to be able to do is turn to the next page. The batteries on these things last so long, especially for my XTEInk reader. I've never seen it get below 98%. As long as you've got the Bluetooth off and the Wi-Fi off and you're just keeping an eye on the battery percent every once in a while, like, you're not gonna really need to worry about your e-reader dying and no longer having access to your book. It's probably happened to me 3 or 4 times in the 7 years that I've had a Kindle. Now let's talk about each one of the e-readers individually and the pros and cons. We'll get started off with the Kindle. The pros for the Kindle, and specifically the Kindle Basic and the Kindle Paperwhite, since that is what I've had, is that they are a middling size. So they're not so small that you can't read the screen, but they're also not so big that you find it hard to hold in certain situations. But the biggest reason I think most people gravitate towards a Kindle is because of how well known the brand is and how established the ecosystem is. I talk to people about e-readers and they use Kindle as a synonym to e-reader, and it makes me a little bit sad because I do feel like they're missing out on some really, really good options. It's just really well known, and I would rather someone have a Kindle than no e-reader at all. And because they're so well known, if this is something that's important to you, there are way more case options for a Kindle than there are for either one of the other 2 readers that I've had. The cons to having an e-reader mostly revolve around Amazon. I think most people who would be watching this video would be aware of the fact that Amazon has a monopoly over publishing that is ruining reading for other people. It is really hard for smaller authors to get noticed if they're not bought into the Kindle system, but that Kindle system is really set up to take advantage of those authors, which is just super sad. The other big con to a Kindle is that if you buy an EPUB, an ebook, any sort of file from a third party and you are trying to sideload it onto your Kindle, I have had it happen so many times where a sideloaded book just disappears from my Kindle completely, which is so frustrating when I'm reading the entire Wheel of Time, which I bought through a Humble bundle, and all of a sudden all 15 of the books are just disappearing off of my Kindle because I dared to connect to Wi-Fi and sync for a library book. It was honestly making my Kindle unusable for a while there. The workaround that I found for it is that you can go onto the Amazon website and upload EPUBs to your Amazon account and then send them to your device, which is a few more extra steps that I really would want to take, but it doesn't seem to abort itself as often. And also, kind of on the same vein as like a side-loaded book, is that if you want to borrow an ebook from your library, you have to do it through the Libby app and then send it to your Kindle, whereas a Kobo, which I'll talk about next, actually connects directly to the library's OneDrive and you can search through library books on the device. Speaking of Kobos, this is my lovely Kobo Libra Color. I actually just finished this book. I guess you can't even really tell that there's color on the camera. They're not super bright colors, but I find it fun to just see them. The pro to the Kobos is that, especially the Libra, is that it has the buttons. The Kindles used to make a version called the Oasis, which had buttons on the side, but they discontinued it in 2019, which I know a ton of readers lament. And also color. The color soft for the Kindles did not go super great at first. Kobo color screens did not seem to have the same issues that the Kindles did. So if you like colors and if you like buttons, I would recommend specifically the Kobo Libra. Also, like I mentioned before, you can search library books directly from the device itself. You can search through books that your library has available, either to borrow immediately or to place a hold on. You do have to go onto a browser and connect your library cards to your Rakuten account, but once you've done that once, you're pretty much set for life. The Kobos can directly connect to a Bluetooth clicker, so you don't have to have one of the little side attachments. On Kindles, the Bluetooth function is for audio devices only, so if you want to be able to use a clicker to not have to hold your Kindle to turn pages, you have to have that little thing that goes on the side, but you don't for a Kobo. And lastly, side-loaded books behave way better on a Kobo than they do on a Kindle. Not only do they not just like magically offload themselves, but the metadata I found comes through a lot better, so it will keep the books in series and with their author sort and all of the metadata that usually comes with an EPUB. Oh, it decided to reset itself. The cons to a Kobo is that because it's a lesser known brand, there's fewer options for cases, which I know is just like a super surface level thing, but still, if that's something that you're really excited about, just keep that in mind. The library books, because it does connect directly to the overdrive, will automatically return themselves on their due date. Specifically for the Libra, it is bigger than the Kindles are. You can kind of see that. I mean, this is just a base. The Paperwhite will be a little bit bigger, but the dimensions are definitely different, and so not as easy to hold, although I do find myself reading like this a lot because my thumbs so naturally rest on the buttons. It's really easy to turn pages. And lastly, the UI has more options, which sounds great, but it does mean that it is a little bit harder to navigate sometimes. You can get lost in things sometimes, or it's harder to find things sometimes. Not necessarily the biggest con, but definitely something to keep in mind. Lastly, we're going to talk about my XTEInk X3. The biggest pro for this one is that it has MagSafe on the back and it's small enough that it pretty much attaches to any phone that you want it to. So this thing goes with me everywhere. Genuinely, my biggest use case for this lately has been when I have to take a poop break in the middle of the workday. Instead of doom scrolling on my phone, I just flip it over and open up my e-reader and read a book instead. It also has really helped in decreasing my screen time, which I've been super appreciative of. It also feels so natural in your hand, just the size and shape of it, as well as where they've put the buttons on the X3, just feels super nice. It's so convenient, in fact, that sometimes if I leave my Kobo upstairs and I'm wanting to read before I go to bed and I have this on me, I'll just read on this instead of going upstairs to grab my Kobo. It's super easy to flash a custom firmware onto these, which will give you more options such as co-reader sync or being able to use a Bluetooth device. I do think that this probably weighs about as much as any clicker you would get for it does. So why you would want a clicker, I'm not really sure. I guess if you want to hold your hands under your blanket if you're cold or something like that. The cons to this, obviously, it's really small. So if you have a harder time reading and you have to set your font really huge, it means that you'll be pushing the button a lot to turn the pages. Sending books to this is also kind of a pain. The way that I tend to do it is plugging the micro SD card into my laptop and then using Calibre to save the EPUBs to the device, to the disk directly. You can connect to it from your phone by like turning on a Wi-Fi hotspot and then opening up a browser on your phone and sending EPUBs that way, or through a laptop if you don't have some sort of dongle that can read from a micro USB to a laptop and vice versa. Because of the size, it's very losable. I thought that I had lost mine for like a week. I thought that I had put it in my backpack. I searched through my backpack. It wasn't there. I was like, oh my gosh, with it being that small, it's probably just gone forever. Turns out I just put it in an outside pocket and I didn't look there because why would I put it in an outside pocket? But apparently I did. And lastly, there's no touchscreen on this, which is less of a big deal considering how many buttons there are. But the bigger deal for me is that there's also no backlight. So if I want to read on this, I do have to have some sort of external light source. Before I move on to my recommendation, I also want to talk about accessories that I feel like are a game changer when it comes to e-readers. So first of all is this funky contraption, which is called a gooseneck. This part right here will attach to like a nightstand or your bed frame, and then you can maneuver it somewhat easily into a position where it holds your e-reader in a way that makes sense, like if you're laying on your side or if you're laying on your back and you want it directly over your head. And they're not expensive. You can get them from like anywhere from $10 to $20. When you're using a gooseneck, you usually do have to have a clicker. This one, like I said, is Bluetooth, so it directly connects to my Kobo. I did used to have one of the ones for my Kindle that has the little attachment on the side and then the clicker. I don't know, I must have lent it out to like my mom or my sister or something like that because I was not able to find it. And lastly, for the Kobo Libra, as well as I think the Kindle Scribe, which I've never had one before, which is why I didn't talk about it, you can also get styluses. The styluses enable the notebook feature on the Kobo, and I believe the same thing for the Kindle. Also on the Kobo, it means that you can take notes directly in the margins of your books. It messes with the file a little bit because if you change anything about the font or the orientation or the line spacing, obviously everything shifts, but it will keep like a JPEG of whatever note that you took, as well as some information about the location, like what line was it next to, what page was it on, which is really nice if you're a reader like me who likes to take notes in order to improve reading retention. What is my recommendation for an e-reader given my experience with all of these devices? Honestly, I would say none of these specifically. I love having my whole system of readers. I love having different options, but obviously buying 3 e-readers gets really expensive really fast. So when I've had people in the past ask me what kind of e-reader I would recommend for them, given that they don't have one in the first place, I do recommend the Kobo Clara, either the black or white or the color. It honestly has the best of both worlds. It's got the size and shape that is really versatile, but it also connects to the Bluetooth clicker and you're not buying into the Amazon ecosystem. That being said, I've never actually seen one myself, but what I would imagine is just the Kobo UI on a Kindle sized device, and that honestly sounds ideal to me if I only had one e-reader. I also would say that like if you are a big fan of Kindle Unlimited, or you just want the Kindle ecosystem because it's something that's known to you, absolutely go for a Kindle Basic or Paperwhite. I think that they're totally fine. Personally, like if I lost all of my e-readers and I had to buy one, I would probably get a Kobo Clara. I would recommend the Kobo Libra for people who want a bigger screen or the buttons to turn pages, or you know, like a color screen. And lastly, I would recommend the XTEInk to people who already have a primary e-reader such as a Kindle or a Kobo and are looking for something that they can just take with them everywhere. I think it's a very good supplementary device to an e-reader system, but I don't think I would recommend it for someone who has no e-reader to just get this. I think the only reason why I would is because it's cheaper than the other options. And so if you're thinking, I can't afford any of the other options, it's an XTEInk or it's nothing, then go ahead and get it. It genuinely, like, they go with you everywhere. They're just really small, and so you don't get the same experience that you get reading on a Kindle or a Kobo. That's all of my thoughts on each of these e-readers that I've had. I think I mentioned this before, but I pretty much hard cut to a Kobo from my Kindle as soon as I got it. That is why it's my main recommendation. My brother-in-law actually has my Kindle right now because of that, because of how little I was using my Paperwhite. I was just like, go ahead and take this. To do the reading that I want to do, I only really need the XTEInk and a Kobo or a Kindle. I definitely don't need the both the Kindle and the Kobo. I hope that this was helpful for anyone who is trying to decide what kind of e-reader they would like, whether they're getting their very first one or they're getting an extra one. And I will be going back to videos weekly now. They will probably be a little bit shorter, but they should be coming to you guys every Wednesday again, now that I have a little bit more free time after Toby, thank goodness, calming down a little bit. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next week. Bye.